today we're going to be taking a look at one of those systems that you don't see brought up very often because it was so expensive that nobody actually bought it. And that system is going to be the Laseractive. We have the Sega Genesis pack in it, so we can play Mega LD ROM discs. And what they are is they're giant laser discs. If you've never seen a laser disc, they're like 12-inch CDs, and the games are stored on those laser discs.
Yeah, this is pretty special because I've been collecting video games for about 15 years, and aside from playing your Laseractive, this is the only opportunity I've ever had to play one. They're extremely rare, extremely elusive. They break very often.
Yes, they do.
Even at the time, this was a very premium item. So we're playing something that was made for the upper crust of society back in 1993.
Well, the system was about $980 when it came out in 1993. And then if you wanted to play a game, you had to get either the Mega LD or the Sega pack or the TG16 pack. And those were $600 each, believe it or not.
And how much was a regular Sega Genesis back in 1993?
Under $200.
Under $200. So
Yeah.
3 times the amount of a normal system for essentially the same thing. To play Sega Genesis games,
Right.
you pay $600 for the pack that you insert into the Laseractive so that you can play these games.
And there aren't very many of these games. We've got more than half the library right now.
You said approximately 13 games in total.
Something like that. A lot of them are edutainment titles, and I don't really count those because we don't need to see, 3D museum of you going through a museum and looking at pyramids all day long. Nobody cares. So we've just got the games. We're missing a few, like Road Prosecutor, which is also Road Avenger on the Sega CD. We don't have Time Gal. That's very expensive and very in demand. You can also get that on Sega CD, come to think of it. We don't have Ghost Rush, Blue Chicago Blues, or Don Quixote, and I think that's it.
Okay, well, we've got a lot of games to look at today. Again, this is a pretty special, but between your library and our friend's library, we're going to have a good look at what the Laseractive had to offer.
Yes, shout out to the immortal John Hancock for lending us 4 of his discs, which I did not have. He's a good friend, and it's really awesome to have that resource that we can, borrow games from and talk about them. So let's go ahead. Let's jump into Rocket Coaster. Chris,
All right.
I'm going to hand this over to you.
Ooh. A little special honor. The Laseractive is kind of loud. The system itself is pretty loud. Lets you know it's working. Now, back in the day, where could you buy a Laseractive? Could you walk into a typical, Fred Meyer's, Babbage's, software, etc., and buy a Laseractive?
I saw a Laseractive for sale once in my life, and it was at a store called Incredible Universe, which was a very large electronics store, and they specialized in selling just everything. They had CDIs, they had 3DOs, of course the Laseractive, but I only saw it the one time, and Rocket Coaster happens to be the game that they had on demo. A lot of the discs that you'll see online, if you ever see a Laseractive disc online, have a little sample sticker on them, and that's because those were used in store for their demo machines. The funny thing is, if you look at the discs that John let us borrow, they all have Incredible Universe stickers on them still.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
so they came from, from here.
So as you can see, this is not your normal racing game. Tell us a little bit about the specs of what makes this possible.
Well, it's pretty interesting how it works. The pack, either the TG16 or the Sega pack, does most of the handling of the actual game. So the car, the text, the map, all that you see is rendered by essentially a Genesis, but the track itself is Laserdisc video. So you've got the Genesis just overlaid on top of video. And what this game does is something that you can't do on any other system, anything that's not Laserdisc based, where you can slow down the track, which actually slows down the video. You can't do it on VHS because, the tracking would get off, and you can't do it on DVD. If you've ever tried to step through a DVD, it's very jerky. But Laserdisc doesn't have that problem because it is a analog video format. I think that's probably the only interesting thing about Rocket Coaster, honestly. So it is an experience that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, well, I've played a lot of games, but nothing quite like this. On screen, the game looks pretty easy to play, but it's actually kind of finicky. If you hit the walls, it makes a horrible screech sound. And this is one of those racing games where you have to press brake. Most of the time in racing games, I don't bother pressing brake, but you really have to, because if you go flying off the side, you have to start over completely from scratch. It doesn't drop you back in. You need to start the whole track over, so it's not very forgiving.
And if you notice, the track isn't very wide compared to your car. It's, maybe like 5 car widths or something, so yeah, there's not a whole lot of margin for error there.
Yeah, and it's just accelerate, brake, and then you have to press C in order to use the boost, which is arrows that you see on the track, but you kind of need to eagle claw your hand around to hit that while also accelerating. It's not super intuitive. So it's kind of a visually impressive game, but...
No, you didn't make it in time.
I didn't make the cut. But the music is pretty grating, the sound effects a little grating. But again, it is visually impressive. In 1993, if I were to see these CGI backgrounds, I'd be impressed.
Yeah, 1993, what was out at that time? You had the Genesis, you had the Super Nintendo, the 3DO had just come out, along with the CDI, if you really want to have a laugh. So this was pretty impressive looking. And it better have been for the, $1,600 in 1993 money that you had to pay for it, plus $120 for the game. These were not cheap games at the time. And they're still not cheap. I think I paid $50 for this used, and it's the cheapest Laseractive game that I've bought. They're very, very hard to come by. We go to all these retro game shows, a couple of them a year, even PRG, which is the biggest one in the world, and I don't think I've ever seen a Laseractive disc for sale.
You don't see the systems for sale, and when they do pop up, they're usually broken.
Yeah.
Chris here was able to get this one back to life, but it was no easy task. You got to be real scared if you're looking to buy a Laseractive, because even if it works when you get it, there's just a lot of things that go wrong.
Well, there's the packs, the NEC and the Sega packs especially. They use the same kind of capacitors that they used in the Game Gear and the Turbo Express, so they have a tendency to leak. And when they leak, they actually eat through the PCB on the pack, and that's not an easy repair. When I bought this, it was broken in like 3 different ways,
yes.
And it took me a couple weeks to actually go through it and fix it. One of the things was the pack. I had to replace all the capacitors, and it's just a nightmare job. Did I make it in time?
I think you made it.
All right.
Now, the first time I saw this game, and
last week,
I immediately thought of if you go into the movie theater, I think it's Regal Cinemas, and you go on the virtual ride. You guys all know what I'm talking about. It looks like this. Right before you go down, the popcorn kernel pops, gives you a little jump scare. That just reminds me of this. Enjoy the ride.
If only we had the 3D glasses for this thing. Yeah, believe it or not, there we go. Believe it or not, there were 3D glasses that you could get for the Laseractive.
And were they very affordable, $1,600 for the 3D glasses?
I'm sure they were not affordable. I don't know what games they worked with aside for like 3D Museum or 3D Australia or one of them. I've never seen them, so I don't own them.